All right, welcome back. We're here at Henry V, Act 1, Scene 2. Lord willing, we can finish this up pretty quickly. I have, as you can tell, already noted the characters that I know are important in this scene, and I just made a little shortcut for us. So if you're following along, you can add those as I read. Here we go. All right, King Henry begins. Where is my gracious Lord of Canterbury? Talking about the bishop. Not here in presence. Send for him, good uncle. Shall we call in the ambassador, my liege? Says Westmoreland. Not yet, my cousin. We would be resolved before we hear of him, of some things of weight. Then task our thoughts concerning us and France. That task our thoughts. The Bishop of Canterbury enters and says, God and his angels guard your sacred throne and make you long become it. Sure, we thank you, says King Henry. My learned lord, we pray you to proceed and justly and religiously unfold why the law, Salic, that they have in France, or should not bar us in our claim. And God forbid, my dear and faithful lord, that you should fashion, rest, or bow your reading, or nicely charge your understanding soul with opening titles miscreant, whose right suits not in native colors with the truth. For God doth know how many now in health shall drop their blood in approbation of what your reverence shall incite us to. So he's warning the bishop, if what you are telling me is not true, don't say it, because many people potentially die over what you're about to tell me. Therefore, take heed how you impugn our person, how you awake our sleeping sword of war. We charge you in the name of God, take heed. For never two such kingdoms did contend, England and France, without much fall of blood, whose guiltless drops are every one a woe, a sore complaint against him whose wrongs give edge unto the swords. That makes such waste and brief mortality. Under this conjuration speak, my lord. So under this rule, speak. For we will hear, note, and believe in heart that what you speak is in your conscience washed as pure as sin with baptism. The bishop. Then hear me, gracious sovereign, and you peers that owe yourselves, your lives, and your services to this imperial throne. There is no bar, there's no reason not to believe that your highness can make claim to France, but this, which they produce from Pharamond, interim salicum mulieres necessidunt. No French, sorry. No woman shall succeed in Salic land, which Salic land the French unjustly gloze to be the realm of France, and Pharamond, the founder of this law and female bar. Yet their own authors faithfully affirm that the land Salic is actually in Germany, between the floods of Sala and Elbe, where Charles the Great, having subdued the Saxons, there left behind and settled certain French, who, holding in disdain the German women for some dishonest manners of their lives, established then this law, to wit, no female should be an inheritrix in Salic land, or an inheritor of Salic land, which Salic, as I said, twixt Elba and Sala, is at this day in Germany called Meissen. Then doth it well appear the Salic law was not devised for the realm of France, nor did the French possess the Salic land until 421 years after the defunction of King Pharamond, idly supposed the founder of this law, who died within the year of our redemption 426. And Charles the Great subdued the Saxons and did seat the French beyond the river Sala in the year 805. Besides, their writers say, King Pepin, the short, if you'll remember, which deposed Childeric, did, as heir general, being descended of Blithild, which was daughter to King Clotaire, make claim and title to the crown of France. Hugh Capet also, who usurped the crown of Charles the Duke of Lorraine, sole heir male of the true line and stock of Charles the Great, to find his title with some shows of truth. Though in pure truth it was corrupted not, conveyed himself as the heir to the Lady Lingare, daughter to Charlemagne, who was the son to Louis the Emperor, and Louis the son of Charles the Great. Also, King Louis X, who was sole heir to the usurper Capet, could not keep quiet in his conscience, wearing the crown of France, till satisfied that fair Queen Isabel, his grandmother, was lineal of the Lady Ermengar, daughter to Charles, the foresaid Duke of Lorraine, by the which marriage the line of Charles the Great was reunited to the crown of France, so that, in summary, As clear as is the summer's sun, King Pepin's title, and Hugh Capet's claim, King Louis, his satisfaction, all appear to hold in right and title of the female. So 3 different examples of French kings who inherited through their mothers' lines. So do the kings of France unto this day. Howbeit, they would now hold up this Salic law to bar your highness from claiming from the female, and rather choose to hide them in a net than amply to embar their crooked titles usurped from you and your progenitors. So King Henry says, may I then with right and conscience make this claim? And the bishop says, the sin upon my head. So if I'm wrong, it will all fall on my head. Dread sovereign, for in the book of Numbers it is writ, when the man dies, let the inheritance descend unto the daughter. Gracious Lord, stand for your own, unwind your bloody flag, look back into your mighty ancestors, go, my dread Lord, to your great-grandsire's tomb, from whom you claim. Invoke his warlike spirit and your great uncle's Edward the Black Prince, who on the French ground played a tragedy, making defeat on the full power of France, whilst his most mighty father on a hill stood smiling to behold his lion's whelp, forage in blood of French nobility. O noble English that could entertain with half their forces the full pride of France, and let another half stand laughing by, all out of work and cold for action. Bishop of Ely, awake, remembrance of these valiant dead, and with your puissant arm, your military arm, renew their feats. You are their heir, you sit upon their throne. The blood and courage that renowned them runs in your veins, and my thrice puissant liege is in the very May morn of his youth, ripe for exploits and mighty enterprises. Exeter says, your brother kings and monarchs of the earth do all expect that you should rouse yourself as did the former lions of your blood. Westmoreland, another attendant, says, they know your grace hath cause and means and might. So hath your highness. Never king of England had nobles richer and more loyal subjects, whose hearts have left their bodies here in England and lie pavilioned in the fields of France. The bishop says, oh, let their bodies follow, my dear liege, with blood and sword and fire to win your right, in aid whereof we, the spirituality, will raise your highness such a mighty sum as never did the clergy at one time bring in to any of your ancestors. So he's mentioning the money again that he's going to give him to wage this war. King Henry says, we must not only arm to invade the French, but lay down our proportions to defend against the Scot, who will make road upon us with all advantages. They of those marches, gracious sovereign, shall be a wall sufficient to defend our inland from the pilfering borderers. King, we do not mean the coursing snatchers only, so we're not talking about outliers, we're talking about the army of Scotland, but fear the main intendment of the Scot, who hath been still a giddy neighbor to us. For you shall read that my great-grandfather never went with his forces into France, but that the Scot, on his unfurnished kingdom, came pouring like the tide into a breach, with ample and brim fullness of his force, galling the gleaned land with hot assays, or hot battles, girding with grievous siege castles and towns, that England, being empty of defence, hath shook and trembled at the ill neighbourhood. She hath been, then, more feared than harmed, says the Bishop of Canterbury, my liege. For hear her, but exampled by herself, when all her chivalry hath been in France, and she, a mourning widow of her nobles, she hath herself not only well defended, but taken and impounded as a stray the King of Scots, whom she did send to France. So one time when they did that, they were actually able to defend themselves and capture the King of the Scots. To fill King Edward's fame with prisoner kings, and make her chronicle as rich with praise as is the ooze and bottom of the sea with sunken wrack and sumless treasuries. Bishop of Ely says, but there's a saying, very old and true, if that you will France win, then with Scotland first begin. For once, the eagle England being in prey to her unguarded nest, the weasel Scot comes sneaking, and so sucks her princely eggs, playing the mouse in absence of the cat, to tame and havoc more than she can eat. Exeter says, it follows then that the cat must stay at home. Yet that is but a crushed necessity, since we have locks to safeguard necessaries, and pretty traps to catch the petty thieves, while that the armed hand doth fight abroad. The advised head defends itself at home. For government, though high and lower, put into parts, doth keep in one consent, congreeing in a full and natural close like music. Bishop of Canterbury. Therefore doth heaven divide the state of man in diverse functions, setting endeavor in continual motion, to which is fixed as an aim or butt obedience. For so work the honeybees, creatures that by a rule in nature teach the act of order to a peopled kingdom. They have a king and officers of sorts, where some, like magistrates, correct at home, others, like merchants, venture trade abroad. Others, like soldiers armed in their stings, make boot upon the summer's velvet buds, which pillage they with merry march bring home to the tent royal of their emperor, who busied in his majesty surveys the singing masons building roofs of gold, the civil citizens kneading up the honey, the poor mechanic porters crowding in their heavy burdens at his narrow gate, the sad-eyed justice with his surly hum. These are all members of the kingdom that are working together, just like the members of a honeybee hive. The lazy, yawning drone. I this infer that many things having full reference to one consent may work contrariously, as many arrows loosed in several ways come to one mark, as many ways meet in one town, as many fresh streams meet in one salt sea, as many lines close in the dial's center, so may 1,000 actions once afoot end in one purpose and be all well borne without defeat. Therefore, to France, my liege, divide your happy England into 4, whereof take you 1/4, 1/4 into France, and you withal shall make all Gallia shake, another name for France. If we, with thrice such powers left at home, cannot defend our own doors from the dog, let us be worried and our nation lose the name of hardiness and policy. So 1/4 is going to go with Henry to France, and 3/4 are going to stay home to defend themselves. King, call in the messengers sent from the Dauphin. Now are we well resolved, and by God's help and yours, the noble sinews of our power, France, being ours, will bend it to our awe, or break it all to pieces, or there will sit, ruling in large and ample empery over France and all her almost kingly dukedoms, or lay these bones in an unworthy urn, tombless with no remembrance over them. Either our history shall with full mouth speak freely of our acts, or else our grave, like Turkish mute, shall have a tongueless mouth, not worshipped with a waxen epitaph. So I'll go to France, and I'll make myself a good name, or I shall never be heard of again. Now are we well prepared to know the pleasure of our fair cousin Dauphin, for we hear your greeting is from him, not from the king. The ambassador, may it please your majesty to give us leave freely to render what we have in charge, or shall we sparingly show you far off the Dauphin's meaning in our embassy? Is it safe for me to tell you what I have with me? The king says, we are no tyrant, but a Christian king, unto whose grace our passion is as subject as is our wretches fettered in our prisons. Therefore, with frank and with uncurbed plainness, tell us the Dauphin's mind. Okay, says the ambassador, thus then in few, your highness, lately sending into France, did claim some certain dukedoms in the right of your great predecessor, King Edward III. In answer of which claim, the prince, our master, the prince is the Dauphin, says that you savor too much of your youth, and bids you be advised that there's nothing in France that can be with a nimble galliard one. You cannot revel in dukedoms there. He therefore sends you meter for your spirit, or more appropriate to your spirit, this ton of treasure, and in lieu of this desires you let the dukedoms that you claim hear no more of you. This the Dauphin speaks. What treasure, uncle? Says King Henry. Exeter. Tennis balls, my liege. We are glad the Dauphin is so pleasant with us. His present and your pains we thank you for. When we have matched our rackets to these balls, we will in France by God's grace play a set that shall strike his father's crown into the hazard. Tell him he hath made a match with such a wrangler that all the courts of France will be disturbed with chases, chasing the balls. And we understand him well, how he comes o'er us with our wilder days, reminding us of when we were wilder, not measuring what use we made of them. We never valued this poor seat of England, and therefore, living hence, did give ourselves to barbarous license, as 'tis ever common. But that men are merriest when they are from home. But tell the Dauphin I will keep my state, be like a king, and show my sail of greatness when I do rouse me in my throne of France, when I'm the king over there. For that I have laid by my majesty and plotted like a man for working days, but I will rise there with so full a glory that I will dazzle all the eyes of France. Yes, strike the Dauphin blind to look on us, and tell the pleasant prince this mock of his hath turned his balls to gunstones, and his soul shall stand sore charged for the wasteful vengeance that shall fly with them. For many 1,000 widows shall this his mock out of their dear husbands, mock mothers from their sons, mock castles down. All right, I have to stop there. See my notes online.